Hi, everyone. We are fortunate to have two wonderful representatives from Oregon Humane Society joining us today. We have Brian August, who is the Chief Operating Officer and has been with the organization for 3.5 years. And he was very smart in hiring Rhonda Palos. She is the Vice President of Human Resources, and she's been there for 3 years. The two of them agreed to talk with me today about the impact COVID-19 has had on their team and how they as an organization are working through some of the challenges. So I just want to welcome you both and thank you for being with us. How are you guys doing? How's your team doing?
Well, thanks for having us, Catherine. We really appreciate it and all the work that you and the association have been doing to try to keep the organizations across the country together and share resources. So thank you. For our team, they've been demonstrating a remarkable resilience in the face of these unprecedented times and challenges. When we first started reacting or responding to the situation, we quickly formed up our incident command structure, which is based on FEMA and ASPCA training to try to organize our response. And it worked unbelievably well. We've had a lot of practice through responding to natural and man-made disasters throughout the past few years. And we applied that internally, and it really helped provide some structure and organization around this. That's not to say that there aren't challenging days and challenging weeks for our teams and for ourselves personally. That is the nature of these things. When you're slogging through this week after week, month after month, it can wear, and you see it sometimes with the teams. But all in all, they've been able to really rally around what we've been trying to do and focus on the mission, which is continue to help as many animals and their families in the community as we can.
I think one of the things that helps us a lot too is really making an effort to communicate. So we have put in a bunch of different avenues to communicate through, recap on meetings and whatnot, but also to the general staff as a whole. We've tried to do weekly communications, kind of the state of the nation type deal, but we've also every step of the way done a lot of email, bulletin boards for those that are on site. Probably over communicating in some cases, but I think it's really made people feel like they've got this under control. They know what they're doing and they're taking good leadership roles. I've had a lot of positive feedback from our staff about that.
That's fantastic. I hear so often that people feel that they're over communicating, but I can tell you can never communicate the message of care too often. And if your employees and volunteers are hearing that message of care, I can only imagine how much they appreciate it. What has remained sort of the most challenging component of all this from your team, from both an operations perspective and an HR perspective?
Well, I think from an operations perspective, as most organizations have had to do, is just responding to the situation and figuring out what we can do, what we should do, and what we can't do, or what we shouldn't do. And that some of it is black and white and provided by CDC or county or state government, and some of it is gray. And when you're asking people to operate within a gray zone or ambiguous with ambiguous information, that can get wearing as people try to seek out boundaries and understand what their role is in it and what they can do and what they can't do. And that's a challenge, not just operationally, but across the organization to try to navigate this. People are just looking for some structure, and it's hard to give structure that we know is going to last beyond a couple of weeks, because obviously something is going to change and we're going to do our best to respond to it. So that makes it difficult. And then the connection between teams. When you're all at the shelter in the same building or a few buildings, you are able to connect in person, and for meetings or for dropping in and making sure that people are aligned and communicating, that is invaluable to making sure that goes smoothly. When you're doing it by WebEx or by Zoom or Google Hangout, by phone, and worst case by email, there are loads of opportunities for miscommunication, misunderstanding. It's just really hard to connect with your peers and others across the organization to accomplish what you need to.
Yeah. Rhonda, what about from your perspective?
You know, I think from an HR perspective, it's probably not so different than every place. It's the change. So we've had lots of change in the coronavirus and the pandemic. So staying current on that, keeping others current on that. So our world keeps changing. Literally for a while there, it was every day. Sometimes now it's every week. Woohoo, we're making progress. But I also think that it's about the employee's fear and the sense of safety and making sure that they're secure in their work. They want to know they have a job. They want to know that they are safe if they come on site. They want to know what to do if something doesn't go as planned or if their world changes a little bit. So keeping on top of all that has been like trying to have a crystal ball. And so that from an HR perspective has been one of our challenges. But like Brian said, it's also about the communication. Finding new ways for teams to keep meeting by WebEx, finding a routine, working from home, which most of our staff have done for quite a while, is new not only for the staff, but it's new for the managers too in many cases. So finding the right rhythm with that so that people feel really comfortable, still filling their jobs, still feeling useful and fulfilling the mission of the organization, but in a very new way. So everything about HR and staffing has changed. Literally nothing is the same as it was 2 months ago.
You stole my question. My next question to you was, what changes or alterations have you had to make to your HR policy, and how are you pivoting so quickly to do it?
Well, you know, a whole lot has changed both in our day-to-day work, but also in our policies too. So as things change, you have to be flexible in all aspects of human resources in any organization. So for example, one of the very first things we did was to create a change in policy around if you're gone, can you use paid time? Can you use unpaid time? So that was a very thing to take away any barriers for people staying home when they felt ill or were fearful about coming in. So we changed that policy. We changed the policy around social distancing. We just implemented the mask wearing policy as people are starting to return back to work. We tried to make it easy for people to do the right thing and keep each other safe. So that's really been one of the changes for us. But working from home, whole new ball game for most of us. Having the technology to support that, having work training if you can't do your regular day job. What do you do? How do you fill your time? What training is available? All of those have been tremendous challenges, but really, I think that we've pulled it off pretty well. I think we recently did a survey about how do people feel working from home? What's going well? What's not? And the response was, it was just a pulse survey, about 7 questions. And the response was that most people are feeling pretty okay with it and grateful to have that opportunity. So before this happened, we didn't have a work from home policy. Now we do.
How do you anticipate what you should be planning for in the next 6 months?
I think one of the things that we were working on prior to this hitting was personal development and resiliency. So how do you navigate through change? How do you understand what tools and what skills and what self-development do you need to be able to successfully navigate change? That doesn't go away during these times. In fact, I hate to say it, but situations like this are a good test in terms of how far each of us have come in our own development. And so we'll need to continue to work on that as individuals and also collectively. I think on a more practical level, in terms of operationally, we're going to have to figure out, what does this look like if we have to maintain social distancing and mask wearing? We have to continue to monitor changes to things like the CARES Act, which includes the Paycheck Protection Program, which a lot of organizations have leveraged, and the continually evolving rules and directives that the SBA and the Treasury are giving. What about local government, state government? What is our position within the county? What can we do? What are we required to do? And so continuing to be able to monitor those and recognize contingency planning is because you don't know exactly what's coming. And so the contingency planning gives you a starting point. It is not an end unto itself. And so the idea of doing contingency planning and then walking away and saying we're done, it's just not a realistic mindset to have. The contingency planning gives you a starting point from which you can take what you actually did guess right and then adjust those things that you didn't. Preparing the organization through communication and through structure and to say there's going to continue to be change here and we're going to continue to try to stay in front of it is helpful as well. You want to give people some sense of foundation and stability, but also prepare them. We will continue to adjust this as external circumstances dictate, and we'll do our best to communicate with you and support you as we work our way through that. And that's something that we'll need beyond the next 6 months and into next year. Some of that's financial, some of that is operational, some of that is administrative, and it spans everyone from our frontline staff that's dealing with the public to our medical team to our board members as well.
And I would think too, from an HR perspective, when we think about returning to work or the next 6 months, I actually don't think about it in terms of 6 months. I think about in 12 to 24 months. What's it going to look like? How is our job changing? How is the service we provide changing? How do we rebuild teams? I anticipate fully that there will be a more part-time or maybe more full-time working from home. I think that's going to be a part of our world going forward. So how do we shift so that we continue to feel as cohesive as we did, or better yet, improve on what we were doing once before? I think there's also going to be an ongoing need for a feeling of safety in the work environment, more so than there was before. So it's about reminding, it's about communicating, it's about not getting lax in our daily management of our workspace. So I think a whole lot will change, and our priorities will change just a little bit too. Those are probably good things though.
Well, if you could do it over again, if you know now what you didn't know then, what are some of the lessons that you've learned from this pandemic?
A really good question. And I don't know, I'm not great at hindsighting, mostly because our initial response seemed to be pretty much on point. And not that there weren't learnings and opportunities from what we did, but I think one of the things that I, at least personally, would have done is just to have a better sense of the staff fear when there was a bunch of unknowns. And I'll give you an example. We made sure that we had leadership, executive leadership team members here every day of the week. And I think that was the right call. When we were still open to the public, and now we're doing adoptions by appointment, what we missed were some of the external factors that would drive traffic to us. So for example, OMSI, which is the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, closed down. The Oregon Zoo closed down. So what you saw were sites around Portland where people would normally take their kids or their families to have entertainment closed down. Guess what? The Humane Society was still open. We are a bit of a destination. So we had hundreds of people show up here one day. And for our staff, that was pretty overwhelming because masks were not really widely in use at that point. Social distancing wasn't really a thing at that point. So a lot of our staff were feeling overwhelmed and fearful. And I wish I had been on top of that a bit more to say, okay, here's what we're going to put into place to try to help solve some of these issues and make sure our staff feels safe and supported. But the thing is, the day after that, we realized that, we put in some changes, and then I think within a week we were at adoptions by appointment. And this is prior to any stay-home orders from the Oregon governor. So, but you can always respond sooner. And then I think some of the other things are just making sure that we're paying attention to communication and structure as we move forward. You get periods or micro periods of stability, and it's very easy to get into a routine. And I think that's when you see people spread out on their own, do their own thing without pulling people together and communicating like we did early on in this. And that can lead to feelings of isolation and silos which is only exasperated when people are working and trying to connect remotely. So I would have focused us a little bit more on keeping those structures.
I think for me, I probably would have started reaching out a little bit sooner to my peers in HR across the country. As we've gone along, that has been a tremendous help because we're all dealing with something similar. We're all at different stages, but we all have these great ideas. And being able to harvest those from each other has really been a time saver and a helper. We've had new laws go into effect like crazy. We've had new employee issues we've never dealt with. We've had new forms that have to be created. We have all kinds of new stuff, and it's going at breakneck speed. There is no one better than my peers out there to help me with that. And I wish I would have tuned into that just a smidge sooner, because I was doing a lot of hours and creating the wheel myself a lot of times there.
Well, I just want to thank you both for everything that you've done to contribute to the success of the Animal Welfare Daily Digest and the resources that you've shared. I love that you believe you should have reached out to your peers sooner, Rhonda, because we reached out to you right away, and you guys just stepped up, and it's just a pleasure to work with you. And it's great knowing that your leadership is something that we can all count on. So thank you. And I really hope that we can continue having these conversations. Tell everyone at Oregon Humane that we're so proud of them and so happy with all the great work. And we'd like to hear more from you guys as we continue this journey, but really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Catherine. It's a pleasure to share.
And anyone can reach out to us at any time. We are happy to share, to help as much as we can.
Thank you so much. All right, please stay safe. Take care.
Thank you.